It's cold, it's snowy, so make yourself a cup of hot chocolate and snuggle in because I'm going to give you some of my favorite winter-themed horror movies. What's up, you guys? Welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. If you're new here, my name is Jess and I like to talk about movies that make you want to sleep with the lights on. And today is no exception, honey, because like I said, we're going to be talking about 10 of my favorite winter-themed horror movies. These are movies that are going to chill you, thrill you, and give you shivers all the way down to your toes, because some of these are kind of scary and some of these are kind of classic and kind of fun. So if you're interested in any of the words I just threw out at you, stick around because we're about to jump right in. Also, this is a winter horror movie list. This is not a Christmas horror movie list. I think those two things are separate, or at least in my mind. They're separate. When I think of winter, I think of more like snowed in, isolated horror. Christmas, we of course have things like Gremlins and Krampus, and I will be making a Christmas horror list, of course, but I just wanted to make that distinction before anyone asked where Black Christmas was. This list is not rated, of course, because if I had to sit down and rank some of these movies, because some of these movies are my favorites of all times, and I am not looking to have an existential crisis on a Monday morning. So, without further ado, number 10 is John Carpenter's The Thing. The tried and true, snowy, wintry classic, 1982's The Thing, directed by none other than John Carpenter, follows a research team in remote Antarctica that is hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of its victims. I know I said I wasn't going to throw around favorite titles in this video, but I can confidently say John Carpenter's The Thing is my favorite horror movie of all time. It's isolation horror. They're literally in Antarctica. It's freezing, and everything about this movie just gives perfect wintry, trapped in, something's going to get you and you're not going to be able to escape vibes, and it is perfection all around. Of course, I am a practical effect queen. I love it. I eat that shit up. But something about it is truly, truly terrifying, and no other film has been able to capture that feeling that I get from The Thing. I don't know how much more wintry you can get other than this movie. I mean, sometimes camera lenses would freeze and then break because it was so cold. The Thing is such an exceptional example of cosmic horror done well, and even John Carpenter himself has said it's his favorite movie that he's ever directed. I know we're starting off this list strong, but I promise I have some other good contenders in here for you guys. Let's move on to number 9, which is, of course, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The Shining follows the Torrance family as they head up to an isolated hotel for the winter, where a sinister presence influences the father Jack into violence, while his psychic son Danny sees horrific forebodings from both past and future. I know I said you couldn't get much more wintry than The Thing, but this is even more of an isolation horror movie, in my opinion. They are in this gigantic overlook hotel. There is no escape. The equipment doesn't work. The phones don't work. They're stuck in here with Jack, who is quite literally terrifying. And poor Danny is like standing in a mirror, possessed, talking about red rum, and Wendy's looking on like,
oh, this is fine.
I do understand that as of late, The Shining is not everyone's cup of tea, and I respect that, and I understand your reasonings why. However, I think The Shining will always be an effective isolation horror movie with some of the best acting from the 80s. And it would be a crime to leave it off this list because arguably the most wintry part of the movie, and probably my favorite part, is that beautiful maze and that last shot of Jack's face as he freezes. 10 out of 10. Number 3, and that is going to be my personal favorite Stephen King adaptation, and it's, of course, Misery. After a famous author is rescued from a car crash by a fan of his novels, he comes to realize that the care he is receiving is only the beginning of a nightmare for captivity and abuse. Like I said, Rob Reiner's adaptation of Stephen King's novel is my favorite adaptation. I think it is so true to the source work, and while the book does tend to be a little more brutal, actually, Kathy Bates's performance is just the reason 100% why this movie is so effective and so scary. I feel like a big reason why wintry horror movies are so terrifying is because they all tend to have that isolation aspect, and of course we get that with Misery as well. Reiner just brings such a perfect blend of isolation and that atmosphere, that foreboding atmosphere of Paul knowing that something is going to happen, but he doesn't know when. And that's why it's so magical. Also, like I said, Kathy Bates' performance as Annie Wilkes, probably one of my favorite horror villains of all time. I think she truly is terrifying. And of course, I love that take on the worst type of monsters are humans. So 10 out of 10. If you haven't seen Misery yet, I would highly, highly recommend. Number 4 is a little bit of a newer addition to my list, and one that I think is picking up on more and more people's radars, as it should, because number 4 is 2019's The Lodge. A soon-to-be stepmom is snowed in with her fiancé's 2 children at a remote holiday cabin. Just as relations begin to thaw between the trio, some strange and frightening events take place. I personally think that religious trauma and cult mentality movies are some of the most terrifying, because that is a very real effect that has happened to a lot of people, and I think that seeing that play out on screen, especially so well by Riley Keough, I think. I'm sorry, I'm not ignorant, I'm just American, I'm not sure how to say your last name, but you do a wonderful job, by the way. Yeah, Riley's performance is top notch, and you really feel for this character who is just stuck with these god-awful children and can't escape. And you see her mental walls tumbling down and down and down until she finally reaches her breaking point, and there's no coming back from that. So we just feel stuck in this cabin with them. We feel helpless, we feel isolated, and that's why this movie made my list, because it really is effective, and I think it's just gonna be a winter classic. And we could not have a winter horror movie list without number 5, and that is, of course, 30 Days of Night. After an Alaskan town is plunged into darkness for a month, the town's sheriff will soon discover that the horrifying truth to what's been going on in their town, that it's been targeted by a hungry clan of bloodthirsty vampires. Nothing screams winter horror movie like being set during the polar period in Alaska. That is crazy to me. I think that using that polar period of when they have a full month of complete darkness, that is such an interesting and honestly iconic setting for a horror movie. I really want to see this idea explored a little more, but still that period is just so interesting, and the snow and the winter, the complete isolation, that makes for a really, really great horror movie, and 30 Days of Night does that so well, while also being a kick-ass vampire movie. I am always such a sucker for a vampire movie, but 30 Days of Night does it really, really well. I love the gore, I love the acting, and I love the design of the vampires. I think it's really interesting and new. I know it is from 2007, so if you're just now kind of picking up on 2000s horror, I would really encourage you to watch this one. It gets a bad rep for being a little bit chaotic, and while yes, it still is very well acted, and I would highly encourage you guys check it out. Number 6 is one that I have seen being left off of a lot of lists, and I don't know why, because it's one of the best ones on here, but that is 2008's Let the Right One In. Directed by Thomas Alfredson, this Swedish horror movie follows Oscar, a bullied 12-year-old who strikes up a friendship with his new neighbor, the mysterious and moody Eli. Initially reserved, a sweet romance blossoms between them, but a dark secret revealing Eli's connection to a string of bloody local murders threatens everything. In my humble opinion, Let the Right One In is one of the best vampire movies of all time. Funny story, I actually remember renting this one at Blockbuster for my 12-year-old birthday party. Like, literally, I was turning 12 years old, and I was like,
oh, let's rent the Swedish vampire movie.
And I made everyone sit in my living room, watch it with subtitles at 12 years old, okay? I was advanced. I remember just like being enraptured by the whole entire thing, and about half of the girls there had to call their parents to come pick them up because they were too scared. Hey, I'm just gonna call it as it is, survival of the fittest. They were obviously not cool enough to be my friends, so. Of course, it brings that wintry atmosphere, but also this movie is just so haunting and chilling and emotional that it literally seeps down into your bones. A young love story at the root of it all, the acting and direction just make this one of the most rewatchable in my opinion, and I would highly recommend this. If you've been putting Let the Right One In off, take this as your sign to watch it because it really is that good. Also, side note, there is a 2010 remake by Matt Reeves called Let Me In. So good, by the way, which is really tough to say about American remakes because we typically tend to take a lot of foreign movies and turn them into shit. But Let Me In is very good. It still is really true to the source material without feeling like it's a direct copy, but it brings enough uniqueness to stand on its own. So if you've seen Let the Right One In, but you've been a little bit hesitant to watch Let Me In, I promise it's very good. Number 7 is another newer addition to my list, and that is 2020's The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Directed by Jim Cummings, terror grips a small mountain town as bodies are discovered after each full moon. Losing sleep, raising a teenage daughter, and caring for his ailing father, Officer Marshall struggles to remind himself that there's no such thing as werewolves. I love good creature feature. I love a good werewolf movie, and this is a good werewolf movie. It's a good play on one, if you know what I mean. I did not expect to like this one as much as I did going in, and that's because I just really didn't know what to expect. But now that I know what to expect, or when I was watching it, I really liked the aspect of humor that was brought to it, because at the root of it all, this is a horror comedy. Yes, there's gore, yes, there's dark themes, but there's a really dry comedic element to this, and I think it really makes this movie rewatchable for me. The script is just sharp and witty and outright funny, and I really like the werewolf element in this. I think it's really unique, and I think a lot of people who haven't seen it, if you watch it, I think you'll like it. This is one that I recommend as a little horror comedy hidden gem out there to anyone who says they love movies like Ginger Snaps. Of course, we have a real snowy setting, a monster movie, lots of gore, and an interesting twist that I think makes this one rewatchable for me every single year. Number 8 on my list is Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak. In the aftermath of a family tragedy, an aspiring author is torn between her love for her childhood friend and the temptation of a mysterious outsider. Trying to escape the ghosts of her past, she is swept away to a house that breathes, bleeds, and remembers. If you were a Phantom of the Opera superfan girly growing up, this is going to be your new obsession, I'm just telling you right now. Dark, mysterious, gothic, and very well acted, this movie gets a reputation of being more style than substance, and while yes, I do agree at some points, who is not going to want to watch a movie set in a snowed-in gothic mansion with outstanding costumes and Tom Hiddleston?
Nobody.
During the jump scare boom of the 2010s, Del Toro decided to take a leap of faith with bringing a slow burn mystery to life, and I think it really paid off. I love watching Crimson Peak whenever it is disgusting outside and you just can't go anywhere. This is one to snuggle up, light a candle, have a nice glass of wine if you're of age, and relax. Number 9 on my list is Orphan. A husband and wife who recently lost their baby adopt a 9-year-old girl who is not nearly as innocent as she may seem. Of course, hopefully, we are all familiar with this insanely fun movie, and if you have not seen it, don't look into it. Please don't. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it for you, of course, but don't look into it. Sit down, watch it, and let me know what you think. And also, watch the second movie that just came out this year because it's actually pretty good. This is such a unique, crazy, and interesting movie that pulls off one of the biggest plot twists all of 2000s horror. This movie just feels icy and slippery and chilling, and I would not want to be on Esther's bad side because, woo, she got some pent up anger. And number 10 is an underrated horror classic that I think should be on everyone's list because it's such a good time, and that's Curtains. Directed by Richard Kupka in 1983, 6 young actresses auditioning for a movie role at a remote mansion are targeted by a mysterious masked murderer. Curtains is such a hidden gem and underrated slasher icon of a movie, and I'm obsessed. Yeah, the murder weapon is a sickle. I am a sucker for a sickle, man, let me tell you what. Is this movie coherent? 50% of the time, but the other 50% is just chaotic, crazy madness that you just are so enraptured by that you're not going to say what the fuck until after the movie's over. All of the necessary ingredients are here to give us one of the great 80s slashers, a secluded location, snowed-in cars, a freaking chilling frozen lake scene that gets me every time. All of the chaos just ties up into one ending that you don't see coming, and I think it's just so great. If you haven't seen Curtains and you really love 80s slasher or just funny, goofy, all-around good time movies, I would highly recommend this one. There you have it, you guys. Those are 10 of my must-watch winter horror movies, which is different than Christmas movies. Like I said, I will be doing a full Christmas horror movie video, but winter horror movies just have something else going on for me that I love a little bit more. So if you like this video, I would really appreciate it, you giving it a thumbs up. If you liked it a lot, it would really make my day if you hit that subscribe button. Maybe follow me on Instagram if you want to keep up with my life. But again, really appreciate you guys just being here and watching this video. So I'll see you guys next time. Stay creepy.